In the heart of the forgotten village of Moyo, where dusty winds carried whispers of hunger and despair, lived a small family in a crumbling hut. Baba Kofi, a man once full of promise, had been consumed by alcohol, drowning his failures in every bitter sip. Mama Nia, a frail woman with eyes heavy with sorrow, endured his violent outbursts every night. Yet, in the middle of this storm, there was Zuri, a blind girl with a heart pure as the morning sun and a voice that carried hope even in the darkest hours. Zuri was born without sight, but her spirit saw more than any pair of eyes ever could. Her tiny hands often clutched her chest as she prayed fervently to God, asking for peace in her home and healing for her mother's bruises. Every night, as her father's shouting echoed through the thin walls, Zuri would hum softly, her voice acting as a fragile shield against the storm of rage. Little did they know, their miracle was already among them, hidden in the very child they pitied. Every evening, after Baba Kofi had stumbled out into the night and Mama Nia was left nursing her wounds, Zuri would crawl to her mother's side and hold her hand. "Mama, one day God will wipe away all your tears," Zuri would whisper. Her words, though small, carried a strange warmth, a flicker of light in a room overshadowed by despair. Mama Nia would nod weakly, pressing her daughter's tiny hand against her cheek. One night, as the stars flickered weakly in the sky, Zuri felt something strange. A warmth spread from her chest to her fingertips as she held her mother's bruised hand. The pain on Mama Nia's face eased, and her breathing steadied. "Zuri, what did you do?" Mama Nia asked, her voice trembling with wonder. Zuri only shook her head. She didn't know what had happened, but deep inside, she felt as though a door had opened, a door to something much greater than herself. This structure will continue, exploring Zuri's journey as her powers grow, her family transforms, and her village begins to see the light through her miraculous gift. In the days that followed, Mama Nia noticed something remarkable. The bruises that once lingered for weeks faded overnight, and the constant ache in her bones vanished. Though she didn't understand it, she knew her daughter had been touched by something divine. Zuri, unaware of the full extent of her gift, continued her prayers and soft hums every night, clutching her mother's hands with an innocence that carried immeasurable power. But Baba Kofi's behavior grew worse. The weight of his failures and the poison of alcohol turned him into a man unrecognizable from his former self. He would storm into the hut late at night, his voice slurred, his movements violent. On one such night, as he raised his hand to strike Mama Nia, Zuri stepped forward, her small figure trembling yet firm. "Papa, stop," she said softly. Her voice, though quiet, carried an unexplainable authority. Baba Kofi froze, his hand suspended in the air, and for the first time in years, he dropped to his knees and wept. Word began to spread through the village about the little blind girl who had something special about her. It started with Mama Nia mentioning to a neighbor how her pains had disappeared after Zuri held her hand. Then, an elderly woman with swollen joints visited their tiny hut, guided by her grandson. She sat before Zuri and said, "Child, they say you have been blessed. Will you place your hands on me?" Zuri hesitated, clutching her chest the way she always did when she prayed. Slowly, she reached out and placed her small hands on the woman's swollen knees. Warmth spread through Zuri's fingertips again, and the old woman gasped, tears streaming down her wrinkled face as she stood up without help for the first time in years. "The child is a miracle," the woman exclaimed as she stumbled out of the hut, her voice echoing through the night. More villagers began to visit, each carrying their pain, their ailments, their desperate hope. Zuri welcomed them all, her gentle voice soothing their fears, her hands bringing comfort and healing. But with every person she healed, Zuri grew weaker. Her fragile body carried the weight of her gift, and Mama Nia began to worry. One evening, after healing a little boy who had been unable to walk since birth, Zuri collapsed. Mama Nia rushed to her side, her tears falling onto her daughter's pale face. "Zuri, my child, you must rest. You cannot heal everyone." But Zuri, with a faint smile, whispered, "Mama, God is using me. I must do what I can." In the corner of the hut, Baba Kofi sat quietly, his head in his hands. For the first time in years he felt shame. Shame for the pain he had caused his family, shame for the man he had become. As he watched his frail daughter lying on the mat, he made a silent promise. He would change. That night, he poured out every bottle of alcohol he had hidden, letting the liquid soak into the dry earth outside their hut. The next morning, Baba Kofi stood at the doorway, his shoulders squared, his eyes clear. "Nia, I will rebuild this family," he said firmly. Mama Nia, though skeptical, saw something different in his eyes, a spark of the man she had once fallen in love with. And as Zuri lay resting, her face peaceful and calm, the first rays of sunlight poured through the cracks in their hut, bathing the little family in golden light. But beyond the peaceful moment, a storm was brewing. News of Zuri's miraculous gift had reached the ears of powerful people from distant towns. Greedy men who saw her not as a blessing, but as a tool they could control for their own gain. The quiet days of healing and prayer were about to be disrupted, and the little family in the village of Moyo would soon face trials greater than they had ever imagined.